Hey everyone, welcome to episode 69 of Women Seeking Wholeness. I'm Cherie Burton, and this is a podcast for women who long to feel, express, and be who they truly are. Hey, if you don't know, on Thursday, as in tomorrow, we're having a free marriage masterclass. So just go to standspeakshine.com. You'll see it all there, where to register. Go ahead and register. It is free. It's 2 hours, but if you can't listen live, it's recorded. So we'll send you the recording if you can't get on live. It's for you and your spouse. It's all the stuff I wish I'd known before I got married almost 25 years ago. And Dimple Thacker, who's doing it with me, she's who I interviewed 2 weeks ago on the podcast. Both of us were on the verge of divorce, and she and I are living parallel existence with our pain points in our marriage. She in the UK, me here in the States. Anyway, go check that out on standspeakshine.com. I just want to do a call out for that. This episode today with Cammie Guildner. She has a podcast called Extraordinary Women Radio. It's about women making an impact on the world. It's named Best Business Podcast in the 2018 People's Choice Award. She's been featured on many high-end shows, so I felt really blessed to be able to have her on our show. But her entrepreneurial journey was really interesting, and she'll share how it went from the corporate world into her true soul work. But that's what she is doing now, is she's bringing people into mindful business strategy. Who are you? Why are you here in the world? And what are you here showing up to do? So she's a very successful business coach that way, particularly helping women learn lessons in how to build a brand around their aspirations and desires, and really where they shine, where their gifts are. And she's also the author of Firedancer, Your Spiral Journey to a Life of Passion and Purpose. Cammie, welcome to Women Seeking Wholeness. Thanks for...
Cherie, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I was a guest on your podcast, so this is turnaround is fair trade, right?
Yeah, and I love doing that. I totally love doing that. And my listeners are loving your show. We just launched it last week, so I'm hearing great feedback on it.
Oh, good. Well, yeah, let's share with my listeners kind of where we went. I mean, I want to start with your journey, because you and I have a real parallel journey with how we started as entrepreneurs in the first economic downturn back in 2008. So that's been 12 years when there was I would say a less intense planetary crisis for sure, but nonetheless an economic downturn.
Right.
Yeah. What was going on for you back then?
So in 2008, I lost my executive job, right? I was in the corporate world. I'd been in the corporate world my whole life. And there was this point where I lost my job, and it kind of stripped me of all of my identity, and I didn't know what the heck I was going to do. And I was really trying to figure that out. And certainly I would have never left the corporate world on my own. So I can look back at it now and go, thank goodness, one, I got laid off, and second, that it was the year 2008, because there was a journey that I was supposed to be on, another path. And so the universe really gifted me a transition that helped me step into the work that I get to do today. And I think that the second gift was it was 2008, right? So there wasn't other VP of marketing jobs to step into. And I actually took about 17 months before I figured out what I was supposed to be doing. I really thought I was going to go back into the corporate world. And I kept trying to push that and kept trying to push it, and it wasn't working. And there was a point where my husband actually said to me, he's like, why don't you start your own business? And I was like, well, I'm not an entrepreneur. I've been in the corporate world for my whole life. And he's like, well, think about it. And so then the cards really started aligning, and I actually had a very magical moment with a horse that I was in this point. I was on the phone with a coach, first of all, and I was in tears and I was crying, and I was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing with my life. And she said to me, you know what? I would like you to go out and breathe your horse's breath today. And I was like, okay, I've
breathe
been a
your horse's breath.
Right. Exactly. And I was like, I'd been a horse person my whole life, but I was like, okay, that seems like a really obscure thing to do, but it makes sense. And so I went out, and I just, trusted what she was suggesting to me. And I went out to the barn, and I had a mare that was standing at the gate, and I literally had a very, and I started to breathe her breath, and it was a cold, snowy day here in Colorado. And as I really started to just take in her energy, and I kind of backed up to her, turned around and kind of put my back to her back. And I had this epiphany moment that I was not supposed to go back to the corporate world. And horses were actually what brought me into the coaching field. It was like somebody had told me about coaching with horses. And I was like, well, that's really interesting. And I was intrigued with it and doing leadership work with horses. And so I was intrigued, but it wasn't until that very moment that it just clicked for me that I wasn't supposed to be trying to push this, finding a job back in the corporate world, that there was a different path. And within the month, I was in Northern California certifying as an equine guided coach, and spent a month on a ranch in Northern California, really going through the certification, the programs, and that opened up my whole world of coaching. And that's where I started. Yeah.
That's amazing. I love horses. They're literally my favorite animal. They're so powerful. And I mean, equine therapy is amazing. There's actually a couple of facilities right near where I live that do equine therapy. And
yeah,
and
it's
it was
really
almost
powerful.
It's like animal speak. Have you heard of that?
Oh, it's my favorite book. It's so funny you say that. I love that book. It is like such a resource in our house. Even my husband, who wouldn't have ever been down this, very looking at spiritual things and paying attention to the animals all around us. And he's always pulling out my animal speak book and saying, "Oh my gosh, I saw a blue heron on the way home tonight. I wonder what that means." And so he gets it out and he reads it, and it's awesome.
Wow, it is cool, like how plants, the plant kingdom and the animal kingdom really do speak to us. I mean,
It does.
if you're awake to it, like if you're really conscious of it. I mean, it sounds super woo woo to a lot of people, but if you're really aware of what's on, like showing up for you in your present moments, you'll see that nature is always trying to communicate.
And what's funny for me, Cherie, is that I was so not in the spiritual space. And I don't think I would have gone down. I mean, the spiritual world is very much part of my business today. And it's huge in how I work with my clients as business entrepreneurs and that sort of thing. However, I would not have ever gone down the pathway of spirituality without nature having led me there. And I had some negative experiences in the world of religion at one point in my life, early in my life, that I just was kind of tuned off to it. And so I wasn't in that state of mind. But when I started to go down the pathway of nature leading me into that space, and I'd always been someone that loved nature, be out in hikes, and I would just find this magical moments out in nature. And the horses certainly took me there as well. I could be in very magical moments with the horses, but that's what opened up my pathway to actually even exploring in spirituality again. And it was really fascinating to me, right? I mean, it was like, once I started to get it, it was like, oh my gosh, this is magical. I want more of this. And then it really became much more expansive than just the nature part of it. But that was the part that was my entry.
So you say if you don't mind me sharing, like, what was your religion of origin? Like, you said you have a negative experience.
Yeah, and it wasn't even my childhood, because we grew up and we didn't go to church very often, and we did when we'd go to Sunday school or something, and it was a Methodist church, but that wasn't where the negative space really took place, because that was fun for me, and it wasn't something that was a core part of our family, if you will. And it wasn't into my 20s where I started having some people really push religion on me and talk about it in ways that if it's, it's look at it, it's our way or it's not, or you're going to, you're a bad person if you're not following this way. And that's where I really pulled back from it. And it was a work environment actually where somebody was really doing a lot of pushing on me. And so I kind of put up walls around it. And it wasn't until, this shift where I really started to see spirituality in a very expansive way, and start to play in the magic of it, and playing with the universe and how the universe can get in behind us when we are in alignment with it. And there's just so much magic that can happen that way.
Absolutely. And we talk a lot about this with a lot of my guests on the podcast of, how do you source, inner knowing, embodied wisdom.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
How do you take the platform you were given, which was typically for most of us some kind of religious, the US itself, I mean, I have listeners who are from all over the world, but every country has some kind of a religious foundation.
Right.
And so all of us have some degree of programming with religion and God and Jesus or Buddha or whatever. It's like, how do you still acknowledge and appreciate and be one with your communities and what have you, but still individuate from the groupthink or the tribal mentality and find who you
Yours.
really are?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think each of us has our connection to spirituality, and whether it's through our religion, whether it's through nature, it's all of it there's such synchronicities when you actually really get behind it all, or, get into the depths of it all.
Mm,
And I love that because it's all of it. Our spiritual journey is so powerful. And it's
mm,
funny because I remember several years ago, I was rebranding my company, trying to figure out what the next evolution of my company was. And I was playing with the eclipse. I was playing with, the moon cycles and all these different things. I was really playing with the magic of it all. Right. And, being curious about what was it that my business wanted to be. And I was journaling. I was asking the question, what do I want to be known for? And what came up for me in my writing was spirit. And I was like, what? And it was such a surprise for me. And I was like, I called my best friend. I'm like, I don't even know what to do with this. And so it was like starting to trust and to let go of like old walls that I had around that,
Mhm.
and being curious about it.
Getting curious, being in that's the power of spirituality that I think gets missed a lot, is the nuance and being in the not knowing, being in the mystery
Right, right.
and giving, and this life being this adventure. I think you could make the same analogy, like, spiritual path and entrepreneur path, like religion, spirituality, like they're both they're both separating from, I guess, the the masses
Mm-hmm.
or the
Mm-hmm.
institutionalized, whatever leadership, and going into your own, like, why am I here? Why did I incarnate? What's next? What is my offering to humanity? And I think some people have a heart, I think particularly women, because we don't want to commoditize our um spiritual gifts, if you will, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's some
Right.
resistance to that.
Right. Right. We want to show up in our gifts and not, and I have clients that are like, gosh, how do I charge for this? And how do I, and so there's this evolution of moving into the value that you bring and trusting the value that you bring. And it's all abundant. I mean, if we can step into those gifts of who we are, the abundance really comes with that. And that changes that mindset.
Absolutely, because where our birthright is to have abundance.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, so you have this beautiful kind of transition with shifting, your whole career path from nature, having this experience with nature, with an animal, with a horse, and that led you into your true work in the world. So was that rock? I mean, it's always rocky, right? Like you
Oh
think you
gosh.
get this answer and you're like, oh, then the way is just going to be totally cleared for me. And it's going to be magic and everything's going to line up perfectly. But that's not always the way it works.
No, it's not how it works. But what was interesting is very early on when I first made that, when the clarity first came through, things actually did flow pretty easily right up front. So through the first evolution, for the first several years of my business, there was a lot of, the right coaches showed up in my life, the right teachers, the right trainers, the right lessons, and I was getting clients. And so things were happening in a really beautiful way for me very early on. And then as if you can think of a trajectory of your business growing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Suddenly it leveled off. And what happened was so early on in my business, I was helping a lot of women who were in the corporate world, who were seeing this possibility, something new in their life. What's their next chapter going to look like? So that was a lot of where I really started. I was working with a lot of executive women, like I had been, who wanted to make this transition. But then it started to level off, right? So I was helping all these women, and all these women started taking the leap into building their own businesses. And as my business leveled off, and I started following, and there's so many shiny stars out in the world as far as, which route do you take to grow your business? And so I started following these shiny stars and these ideas, and, this is how you market, this is how you write your copy, you base it on pain points, you base it on. And so I started following all of this. And what happened was my business actually dropped at that point, because I really got out of this zone of being me and being aligned to who I was, and started saying, okay, well, if this is how you grow your business, I'm just going to follow this. And as I started to do that, my business dropped. I felt out of sorts. I was trying to figure it all out. And that was the year where I really took a whole year where I looked at, what did my business want to be? And I started asking myself these questions and making space to be curious about it. And what came from that was clarity around, okay, I was supposed to be doing more business coaching, but it was in a way that was helping people stay aligned to who they are, versus and doing it in a way where they were talking about the aspirations of their clients versus the pain points and all the ugly. I mean, we've all seen ugly messaging in marketing. And so I think that the shift that really called to me to follow that and to listen to that, helped shift my brand, helped shift me back to this space of building marketing, helping build companies that are really aligned to who people are. And that's what excites me.
Yeah, I love that. I think we're moving because of this fire. So let's kind of go there now. Because you and I talked about this on your podcast, like there is this movement happening where, yes, lots of awakening, but globally it's mass. It's
huge.
Critical mass. Yeah. It's every single person on the entire planet has been affected. So, or woken up in some way to think that have the same fears, have the, such uncertainty, right? About like what if the stock market crashes? What if the economy tanks? What if, right? How do you see that as a positive? I mean, I have my own thoughts about it too, but like what kind of gift, and we're talking about gifts, right? Being with your gifts, and like, what's the actual gift in this? How do you see it?
Well, I think our world has been and we can talk about masculine, feminine, and it's, just to clarify my thoughts on this, is we all have masculine and we all have feminine, but we've all, this journey that our world has been predominantly driven by masculine energies for a long, long time. And I think that we are coming into this space, and it's like the constant go. I mean, you think about, and I'm guilty of this, right? I'm guilty of getting into constant go, and to, that moving forward in a very linear approach.
Right.
However, if we can, this pause, it's like our whole world has suddenly got this whole pause, right? And we pause to be in our homes, to be with our families. The earth is getting a pause, and there's healing happening on the earth. I heard somebody saying this morning that there were dolphins in the canals of Venice. It's just things are different, right? And so things are the earth is having a chance to breathe and to shift, and we are coming back into our homes and having a place to breathe and pay attention to what's most important in our lives. And at the end of the day, it's like, I've been talking with my clients, with my mastermind group, and really talking to them about, okay, what are the gifts of you, and how do you show up in the gifts of your stories right now to help make a difference with this? And I think it's, if we're each looking at, okay, we have been given gifts and talents, and, I think you and I have talked a little bit about this, we left the corporate world, we left our journeys and stepped into the work we're doing back in 2008. And we've been learning, we've been growing, we've been evolving. And frankly, I think we are made for these times, right?
Yes.
To be able to step up and not necessarily, I mean, we have to take the space for us to heal and to be in it and ride the wave of emotions that comes along with this. But at the same time, we can't sit back and hide in our gifts right now. This is a time to really step up and think about, how are my gifts really meant to matter in the mix of all of this chaos that's happening, and how can we help with this? And that's where I think our earth really starts to shift, and we think about, and I work mostly with women, and I think of these women, whether they're in the leadership space, the culture work in corporations, to I have clients that are in the nutrition space. I have clients who are coaches, really helping women figure out what's next. And all of them are stepping up in ways that they're owning their gifts of how they're meant to matter and showing up for their clients, but not in a like chasing kind of way, but
Right.
really in a giving kind of way.
Right. It's not a time to, we have to be really sensitive to, where people are at mentally.
Yes.
It's because that's my whole background is like emotional health and helping people to stay in alignment with, mindfulness and all those things. And I have found that it's no longer like mindfulness obviously made this huge resurgence, meditation, yoga, and all that kind of stuff, which is really like basic Buddhist principles, but they've made this huge resurgence. And now it used to be that like, oh, this would be a great thing to put into your day to, do meditation. Or now it's a requirement. It is
Right.
not an option. If you're going to stay into your own soul knowing, in spiritual alignment, I mean, just in mental health alone,
Right.
you have to. Because if you get on social media, you'll go down a conspiracy theory track. Like, it's bad.
Yes.
There's a lot of fear mongering. And then there's a lot of, so let's talk about, how do you raise your energetic vibe? This is something you specialize in. You've been specializing in.
I love this. Yeah. And I haven't always specialized in this. So this is even more fun for me, because this is one of those moments where I had we came back from Italy last fall, and I'd been talking about how you resonate matters, right? The energy that we're in is but I didn't really have like the work behind it. I didn't have it pulled together. And we came back from Italy, and I got sick. I got really sick with the flu. And was the
it the
whole
coronavirus?
month. Well, you wonder now. My husband and I totally wonder about this now, right? Because we came back from Italy. We got back on October 6th. My big 3-day event, Extraordinary Women Ignite, was a month out from that. It was going to be the first part of November. And I had developed all my content for the 3-day event before we went to Italy. So this is one of those divine things, right? So suddenly I'm sick. I'm in bed. I had all this stuff that I had planned to go do when we got back from Italy. And when we got back from Italy, instead, I got sick. And so for the first 2 weeks of October, I was literally in bed. And I was doing a lot of meditations. I was reading. And I kept having these amazing ideas and thoughts kind of come into me around the energy of our emotions and how we resonate. And I've been talking about resonating all year long, but I didn't really have meat behind it, if you will. And then the last 2 weeks of October, I still wasn't feeling all the way up to par to be out and doing things. And so I started really playing with this. And it was like, I was listening to a Gabby Bernstein, or I was reading Gabby Bernstein's new book. And she started talking about the vibrational emotion scale. And I thought, well, that's really interesting. What is that? And the day before that, I had been listening to a guided meditation on Insight Timer. And vibrational emotional scale had shown up on that meditation. And I was like, what the heck is this? And so I start researching it, right? So it's like all this stuff starts, all the
Well,
right
that's how it
messages,
works.
right? All
Yeah,
the right
that's how it works
messages
when the
coming to you.
universe wants to teach you something.
Yeah, they're like, hello.
Yeah.
And so I started really looking into that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. This is what I was looking for. And so then I had the space to work in that and then to take what was my interpretation of that and how did it matter for entrepreneurs to really show up and how we resonate, and it has to do with our mindset. It has to do with our body set and how we're showing up energetically. It has to do with our spirit connection and being really aligned to who we are as a spiritual being. And it has to do with our communities that we live in. And so what all of this really came to for me is what I call the R factor. And what I believe and what I know to be true is even from my own journey, right? It's like I can have all the right branding in place and all the right packaging and pricing in place and, be stepping out from a visible perspective. But if I'm not really truly resonating on my highest energy, my business isn't going to grow. And that's kind of what I had come into, about 6 years ago when my business really got stuck. And when it started to drop was my energy went down with it. And so, we can have, what happens for us as entrepreneurs, we get this, we get the little voice that's at the back of our head saying, who are you to step into this?
Right.
The not enoughisms and the fear and all the things that can show up. And that can really lower how we resonate. So taking care of ourselves and how we resonate is one of the most important things we can do as entrepreneurs to really create this space of self-care so that, you talk about the meditation being, it's a must. It's something making space for ourselves like that in the quiet and the peace and the feeding of that soul of who we are is so important as entrepreneurs. And so that's the resonate piece.
Love it. Yeah, because I had a teacher, his name's Nithya Shanti, and he was a Buddhist tree monk for, gosh, I don't know how many years, and probably about 6 years, age 16 to 22, something like that. And then he went out in the world and he told me that people learn through resonance. That's the only way people really learn. Like one thing will go one ear and out the other. Like you're sitting in class, like what do we learn? What do we remember from high school, right?
Right.
Or junior high. But if there's resonance, you'll remember it and you'll internalize it.
So it's the energy of really connecting to it, isn't it?
Yes.
Cool.
So that's always stuck with me. So when you talk about raising your vibration, that is the goal, right? To be in resonance, and that's alignment. Really, it's natural order. It's inner alignment. So how would so for the woman who's just listening to this going, okay, maybe her husband lost his job, or maybe she's was already thinking, I need to be an entrepreneur. I have something in me that the world needs. Maybe I want to be a leader. Maybe I need a strategy. Where would you have her start? Because you and I are coaches, and I know there's a lot of people who've thought about coaching or thought about doing something in the helping industry in some way, shape, or form, or having some kind of a message and getting it out there. So, I mean, apart from coaching, anything, any pursuit, any soul path, how would you say is the best way to get a woman going on that and connecting to that?
Well, my book, Firedancer, Your Spiral Journey to a Life of Passion and Purpose was very much about that. And I share a lot of my own journey, from the time when I got laid off to the horse's breath and all of those sorts of things in that book. And what I have found over the years and working with, all the women that I've worked with through that kind of a journey, I think some of the most important work that we can really do is to tune into who we are at our very essence. And that means going through our stories of our life where we've been really lit up in our life and things that have made us just feel like we're on fire. I mean, we can all think of moments like that in our life, right? And if we start to look at those moments, we can start to tap into what were our strengths that we were really showing up then, what were our passions, what are our values, and our values are always shifting and changing. So, looking at our values on a regular basis anyway is, I think, an important part of it. But through that, you really get clear about who you are at your very essence and those gifts of who you are. And you start to think about, okay, well, how can I make a difference, or how would I like to make a difference with the gifts of who I am?
Mm.
And I think that really starts to open up a new pathway of even being able to see things that you couldn't see before. I mean, I think when I made that transition, I never thought I'd be an entrepreneur, right? I mean, it was just not part of my world. And when I started looking at what what had let me up in my lifetime, it was always tied to the energy of helping others and leading others through, to this vision of something new. And it, when I had done it in the corporate world, it was very different than when I became an entrepreneur. But that was the part of me that really lit me up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what if people are, especially, I mean, I think there's going to be people coming out of this time right now. Well, they will lose their jobs, or maybe they're just tired of it.
Yeah.
And starting to say, you know what, life is too short and I really want to do something that's meaningful. This is a time to think about, how do you want your gifts to matter? What are ways, and start to dream in ways that have no boundaries. When you start dreaming about what's next pathway, don't put boundaries around yourself saying, well, if I went down that pathway, this might happen. Really just be open to free dreaming with that.
Beautiful. Yeah. And if I always tell people, like, there's a few questions you can ask yourself when you're trying to get to the core of your soul path. And that is, what would I do if I had no responsibilities,
Mm-hmm.
no demands on my time, money? Money's not a factor, time's not a factor. Take all that off the table. What is it that I actually love to do? And what is one like baby step that, just getting people to take a baby step in the direction of even defining that and getting clarity on that. And as they move in that direction, then they get more and more clarity. And then, like you said, and then the things will show up, the
Right.
horse will breathe on you.
Exactly. And you'll go, what the heck was that about?
Yeah, it will happen. You just trust that it will. It will.
And it does. And I think that's when you say that, it's like, yes, please trust that it does, because I think the moment you start to ask the questions, the universe gets all excited and says, oh my gosh, she's listening to me.
Exactly. She's awake. Here we go. So one more question I wanted to ask you, because I know this is something that's big, right? What is the one thing that holds most entrepreneurs back? What would be the biggest factor, the single biggest factor that holds entrepreneurs back?
I think it's this R factor, right? That how we resonate is truly the biggest factor that can keep us from expanding, because we shrink. If we're resonating on a low vibe, if we're not paying attention to the fear, we shrink. If
Mm-hmm.
we if we let these mind games start to play too big, if they start showing up all the time, we don't we just don't step into spaces that feel uncomfortable. And if we are learning to acknowledge and feel in our bodies when something feels off, and notice when those stories start being, going around in our head, we can shift that. But it's a practice of learning to shift that. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that's the most important thing that we can do is to recognize what emotions are there, what feelings are there, what's showing up in our bodies, and then putting the right resources around us to learn to it's not like fear goes away, and it's not like the stories won't show up in our head. But if we can learn to recognize those much more quickly, we can learn to maneuver through them more quickly, and then the expansiveness comes on the other side of that.
Yeah. One more thing I want to touch on, because I know it's a specialty of yours, as it is mine, is how to elevate your voice to get more impact. Because everyone has something in them. And
Right.
I think we're in the era of this new feminine energy where women have been silenced for millennia.
Yes.
How do you tell a woman how to elevate her voice to have more impact?
My favorite question I like to ask is, if the whole world could hear one message from you, what would that be? And most of us, when we stop and we consider that question, we don't have that immediate answer, right? We're looking for it. We're tapping into. We're like, oh, I don't know what that is, and so really spending time on that question can help. And then the other part of that, I think, is equally being really clear about knowing how that will help other people, because it can be scary stepping into your voice. And so when you take it off of, it's not about you, but it's about the people that you can help by stepping into your voice, it
Mm-hmm.
starts to change things, right? People can be much more courageous when it's about helping someone. And I think women especially can be much more courageous when you really find a clarity around, how am I going to be helping these people that are waiting to find me right now? And it's in that moment where you can say, I can play small in the midst of this, or I can have solid clarity around how I want, what I want people to know, and then to really learn to step into that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, I think women have a great fear of visibility. It's our greatest fear and our greatest desire.
Yeah. And, I think women's wisdom is the medicine that our earth needs right now.
Yes.
And so finding, what's that medicine that you have to give to the world, and really just trusting that you're meant to give this. You were made for these times. There's people waiting for your medicine. So don't play small with it.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Amen. Well, gosh, this has been great. And I know that a lot of women and men, we don't want to leave men out of this, are now rethinking, like, okay, I thought this was my career path, or I thought this was my purpose. I thought I was going, here was my job. But now here's the greater invitation because of what's happening in the world. The world needs me now. It's kind of like I was saying about meditation, like, hey, it was a good idea before. Now it's a necessity. Now we get to look at, all right, well, it was a good idea that maybe I thought about changing my career path or my work or whatever, but now I need it. The world needs it. The world's
Right,
waiting.
right.
There's a quote that I absolutely love, and I can't remember who said it, Frederick somebody, Buhner or something. He said, God calls you to the place where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meet. So God calls you to the place where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meet.
That's beautiful. I've never heard that before.
And I love it because for me, it's a definition of like a soulpreneur path. Like, it's like, you're not commoditizing your spiritual gifts at all. You're finding a way to show up for people who need what you have and would invest in what you have, because you invest in you. There are things you are already investing in that you don't actually need. Maybe there are things you're investing in that you do need. But if the world has a deep hunger and a need for it, then it's like I said, it's no longer, and you love it. Like,
Right.
It's your deep gladness.
You were made for this. I think this is the piece, is there's nobody just like you who can serve the way you serve.
Mm, yes. And even if they're teaching or sharing the exact same thing, that your resonation
Yeah, exactly.
in the offering of it will be very, very different than anyone else in the universe trying to do it. So it doesn't matter. I mean, there's a lot of people that are teaching what I teach, emotional health and whatever, and divine feminine, but the way I do it is different because I have a different resonation and I have a different background. And so it's true for every soul. We all have something that we have to offer this world. And that's why we're on the earth right now. We were born for this. We were made for this. Well, thank you, Cami. This has been great. Can you direct people to where to find your offerings?
Sure. So my website is camiguildner.com, and I have an amazing group on Facebook called Extraordinary Women Connect. And I'm actually getting ready to kick off next week a 6-part series with a lot of my clients, telling how they're stepping into making a difference right now and how their gifts are making a difference. So, right along the lines of what we're talking about here. And I really wanted to, they were just doing such amazing work. I really wanted to showcase them. And so that Extraordinary Women Connect on Facebook is all about connecting great women to great women and helping each other raise up voices. So would love to have anyone interested in joining us.
Perfect. Thanks, Cami.
Thank you so much for having me, Cherie. It's really been a pleasure.
I love this idea about showing up in your true gifts. Abundance being your birthright, leveraging your divine skill set, if you will, what naturally flows from you for the betterment of humanity. StandSpeakShine.com is where I will be issuing the next Stand, Speak, Shine School. This is where I offer people the ability to kind of climb into their soul work and get clear on how to hear the soul voice within and their true gifts, and listen and speak from soul and their own inner authority, if you will, and sourcing that inner sovereignty. So we have a lot of fun in Stand, Speak, Shine School. We're just finishing up this week, our very last week of 12 in our first school, our first 3-month school. So please watch for that. And in the meantime, just have a glorious week and know you're loved and know that all is in divine order.